And I'm with IBM Consulting. We spend a lot of time in the technology ecosystem focused on OTT, analytics, and a whole bunch of other B2B type of technologies that allow for media to continue to advance and transform. I'd like to welcome what I think is a really great panel today. And many of you, and by the way, welcome to our friends who are watching via satellite or anywhere else you're streaming from. But what we are seeing is, the complete transformation of television. I grew up at Disney, the Walt Disney Company, and strategy and alliances focused on television distribution, film distribution, and international distribution. And the monetization opportunities have completely shifted with the advancement of streaming. However, as you'll see from from our panelists, the industry has had to continue to evolve to keep up with the tremendous transformation of television and video, and especially how to monetize these types of things. So I'm delighted with the panel. The only other thing I'll mention is, because I came out of Disney, and one of my colleagues came out of Disney as well from Fandango, Neil. But the reason I want to mention this to you, quite frankly, is that, take a look at the ESPN model. ESPN has led in cable television for many, many years. In the last year, ESPN has ended up being a drag on Disney's stock because their subscriber growth has lessened, and there was an over-reliance on monetization from ESPN. So ESPN is one of the types of companies that is absolutely advancing its streaming strategy and how they're going to monetize outside of the bundle. Well, that's what these executives here how would I say, facilitate. And so without any further ado, let's make some introductions. Evan, I'm going to start with you on the end. If you don't mind, your name, your title, and what you guys are doing in your company. Appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. My name is Evan Greenberg. I'm running audience development and customer acquisition for TAP. We do subscription video on demand. We can basically make a mini Netflix for any personality, organization, that type of thing. We do sort of full service. We work with them to create the content and do co-production. We help with the marketing. We do some of it. We give them best practices for the stuff they want to own. We own customer service. We own all the tech. We're currently doing a lot in the faith and inspiration space, working with a few mega churches. We've also done some stuff in politics, talking to a lot of athletes, musicians. But really, we're looking for people who have audiences that are really dedicated and really they have those super fans that are willing to spend money to really have a personal connection and join a community around that person that they really love.
And the key word there is direct to consumer. You go in direct.
My name is Stephen Strong. I lead partnerships and advertising at Newsy. We're a leader in the short form news space, also growing a direct-to-consumer model. We're really big in the over-the-top space and are a true multi-platform company. So we're also launching a national cable network, audio streaming service, and digital out-of-home network. So really focusing on super serving those interested in the news space, and what a year to be in the news space.
Absolutely.
Hi everyone, I'm Peter Drinkwater. I'm the CEO of Screen Audience Research America and Screen Audience Research International, and we've also got another sister agency, House of Brand. So we do film and TV and content research, so all from the human side to the tech, I guess, and from a consumer point of view, just how much choice is too much choice, and how much am I willing to pay for all this stuff. So yeah, really sort of we're often the why agency to a lot of the analytics. So not just what you're doing, but why you're doing it, which really helps for strategic planning. And then the House of Brand side, our sister agency, we actually do brand advertising and media research, effectiveness research, and attribution modeling. So tell big corporates where to spend their advertising money.
Fantastic. And he has the distinction of flying in from Australia, from Sydney, when your office is in Santa Monica.
Here.
So
there's an office in Santa Monica too. Yeah.
Okay, Reza.
Hi, my name is Reza Rasool, CTO at Real Networks. Glad to be here. You all know Real Networks. I hope we grew up with the brand. What's Real doing now? Well, I'm overseeing two areas of development at Real. One is the codec development, and we'll talk a bit more about that, and one is computer vision, of actually analyzing content and using that to empower other forms of monetization. Yeah, looking forward to talking more. Thanks.
Fantastic. Sandeep.
Morning. Sandeep Sada, I'm the CEO of Quiptel. Our focus is in actually the distribution for video and for the quality of experience. We've just been recently acquired by Falcon Media House 3 months ago, and now the focus is on co-productions as well as the OTT global platform.
Fantastic. And very much needed in the space as we scale OTT, quality of experience and cost reduction, right?
And the aim really is to, direct to consumers, destination brands, and cutting out the middle guys, and helping brands reach out directly, right?
Fantastic. And Neil from Fandango, and Fandango's been busy launching products this year. Neil, tell them about yourself.
Thank you. Good morning. Yeah, as Jeff mentioned, I actually used to work at Disney as well. I've been in this game for about 2 decades, the digital creative space. Currently at Fandango, heading up product experiences. And most of you probably know Fandango for ticketing, but we've really made moves in other areas as far as OTT and delivering to the home. We have a business called Fandango Now. We acquired MGO a little over a year ago, so I'm sure some of you were familiar with MGO. MGO actually has over 50,000 titles, and we are on about 100,000 platforms. So that's everything from Roku to Xbox to Samsung TVs. So you can imagine that with our massive reach within the Fandango ecosystem, the natural extension into the life cycle of going into the home makes sense from a business perspective.
Fantastic. All right. One thing that I failed to mention as we introduce, I'm going to leave about 5 or 10 minutes for questions at the end. And I have a couple of really good lightning round questions. And our goal is to stir things up here and find opportunities. We're looking for, one, gaps in the market, how to advance the market, how to accelerate, what's missing, and who's doing what well that we should be looking at as either audience or to help us develop our own businesses. So I'm going to start out of respect with Stephen with EW Scripts and now Newsy. And Newsy is going gangbusters. Your growth of your OTT platform is pretty significant. Talk about the transformation and then what's driving that transformation. Why are you going that space?
Sure. So when we started 8 years ago, we were primarily a desktop distributed company. A small portion of our viewership was on newsy.com, and most of it came from Newsy syndicated players on other websites. And we were one of the first bigger news companies to launch in the OTT space. And about 2 years ago, and it was a very kind of small portion of our revenue and audience. It started at 2, 3, 4%. A year ago, it was 12%, and we kind of saw that being the future as a consumption of content on big screens and the value of that. So we tripled down on marketing efforts organically and paid to drive audience there, and as a result, our business has pivoted significantly. So where that was 10, 12% a year ago, it's now 90% of our business. So having launched there early on, we've taken advantage of the wave. And about 45% of our audience is cord cutters or cord nevers. They don't have a traditional cable subscription. So the consumption of their news is on Roku, PlayStation, or Xbox, and we're there to take advantage of that, which is great.
Thank you. Reza, I got something for you, because this is, he stumbled over the fact Real Networks, we all know, started it all. He started so much streaming. I used to work with something called Move Networks many years ago. But the reason I mention that to you is what's next, as we're, from a technology point of view, what's next? And in particular, when I'm looking at Real Networks,
Right.
as you accelerate and advance, you mentioned earlier that sometimes people steal your stuff or they leverage it to scale. How do you deal with partnerships at Real Networks to build your business?
Good question. So Real Networks, arguably the inventor of the space, the inventor of streaming media. We developed the first streaming media protocol a long time ago when the Earth's crust was cooling. So we've been the inventor, the originator of technology, not necessarily the beneficiary of that, but Real Networks is where there's a fondness for the brand and can be seen as sort of a serial philanthropist to the industry of creating technologies and putting it out there. So what's coming up? We've seen the pendulum swing in the initial days, streaming technology was heavily server-centric. There was a lot of server-side logic, controlling, buffer management, and so on. And the pendulum swung completely the other way. So now the server-side is dumb storage, and all of the logic of the buffering logic is on the client side. And I feel that perhaps we've lost something there. The consumer's lost some functionality. Slow stream startup times, lots of rebuffering that we observe. Just try sliding the timeline on your Netflix player and see how long it takes to catch up. That sort of performance was unacceptable in the 90s, but it seems to be acceptable by the current generation. And I feel the pendulum's going to swing a bit the other way, where we take some of that well-worn, well-tuned server-side logic that we used to have and bring that more to play in the end-to-end solution. So I hope that gives a little bit of an insight into where I think things are going.
Well, you're mentioning the quality experience, and,
Yes.
and Sandeep, your company has developed a solution to drive costs down, but also improve the quality of experience. Can you elaborate on anything?
No, absolutely. I mean, as a matter of fact, I agree. I think as Reza said, buffering is a big issue for everybody. And what we are trying to get to the viewers and consumers is effectively a TV experience on any device, on any network, right? Because the drop in actually the loss in subscribers is significant, even with a 1 or 2 second delay. And what tends to happen is the consumers don't want to go and find this content somewhere else. So it's an area that we are absolutely addressing, and that's kind of, I suppose, we excel as a business is to streamline that process of viewing with no buffering, and that's where we're going.
And the cost of, my broadcast friends would always say that, the problem with streaming is it costs too much. And, so it costs me a lot more to stream the Super Bowl than it does to get the signal out over the air. And then the quality of experience is poorer to a certain degree, right, as we continue to advance. What do you say to that type of argument? And I would say broadly to the panel, how does that improve? Because streaming seems to be growing at record levels despite the fact that there's a whole lot of quality issues that have to be resolved. I'm going back to you, and then I'll go to Neil and others.
Yeah. So I'm just lost track.
I'll give you some time there.
Yeah.
So,
I love those kind of questions.
So if by costs you mean the CDN costs, absolutely. That's probably one of the biggest bills that an OTT operator would have, apart from licensing of the content. So how do we tackle that one particular cost? And it's with a more efficient codec. We're still burdened with the fact that the browser only supports one codec, the H.264 codec, which is a decade old. So you could try and use the H.265 codec, HEVC, but you need hardware to decode that. So many computers have the hardware in there. But you stumble on another cost. You have to pay the MPEG-LA, HEVC advanced license fees, and so you're trying to use a more advanced codec, but you stumble across the license fee. And so along comes Real Networks and says, okay, we're a proprietary codec. We're not burdened by MPEG-LA or HEVC advanced, and we provide a codec that actually outperforms HEVC and is software implementable, because we took a completely different approach and created a low complexity codec. So I think we do have a solution in that space. It's going great guns in China. It's Real Media is the de facto codec of China. I know 38% of content downloaded off the internet in China is in a Real Media codec of one form or another. And it's embedded in about 1.8 billion devices, and that's where we get our IP royalties from in China, in smart TVs and mobile phones and so on. And it's software implementable even at 4K resolution. So Thanks for
Yeah.
humoring me for that infomercial.
I look at like Evan, for example. You work with niche SVOD, so you go direct to a party, a church, an artist, and say, look, I'll set up your network. What is your competitive advantage, and do you have costs that how do you mitigate the costs and the quality experience, and how do you share that with your direct artists, et cetera?
Yeah, sure. So what we sort of think our advantage is that we're really a full partner compared to some of the other people who may say, oh, we're a white label OTT service, and then you use their tech, and then it's see you later. So the fact that we're we've been doing this for almost 3 years, or maybe almost 4 at this point, to understand, what works and what doesn't when it comes to SVOD marketing, what types of content are successful for these types of channels, having a really much more fuller analytics suite than a lot of our potential that we don't really even consider competitors unless they're, really, doing it full service like we are. And yeah, there is, the upfront cost is there's significance there. Like, yes, when it comes to this type of content, it doesn't take that long or that many subscribers to get to sort of a break-even point when, revenues have been, costs have been recouped for production costs and setup and all that stuff. But there is still a period where we're going to be fronting the costs and potentially paying out a significant guarantee to work with some of these partners. So I think really that for us, it's we've had to raise some venture funds to have that money in the bank, but then really making sure that we're working with the right partners who are bought in and are dedicated to it. It's not an if you build it, they will come type of model. It really is something that has to be integrated into the lines of business and the business models that sort of already exists in order to really reach the consumer and show them that this is important and this is where they want the business to go.
That's great. I wanted to continue along this line, and I'm going to ask Peter, because Peter, you've launched a company now that does audience metrics, and all of this stuff is a challenge as you continue to develop audience either engagement or metrics and feed that back. Can you talk a little bit about your company, and then second, the booth is downstairs, so they're one of the sponsors of Digital Hollywood. So, but the reason I say that to you is measurement has become a critical challenge as we've moved to digital. Talk a little bit more about it.
Yeah, no, definitely. What we sort of find in measurement generally, there's lots of talk about analytics, which is all behavioural data, and again, sort of shows the what, but you always need to know the what and the why in terms of understanding the full picture of what to do in the future and what's going to actually work. So we sort of provide both those services. So we've got offices in Sydney, Melbourne, Tokyo, and here in Santa Monica, and so what we're finding, I guess from a human point of view to all the tech talk, from a consumer point of view, what we're seeing is the trends are, every trend is an unmet need. So, and every trend there's a counter trend. So what's really interesting in content is the more that it fragments from a consumer point of view, and then suddenly people have got so much choice in terms of what to consume, which is great. It's great that people, content is delivered much more to consumer needs at the moment. So on demand is a great need for people because they don't want to restructure their lives around broadcast. So, but then on the flip side, the disadvantage of the middleman dropping out is the lack of curation. So then people are full on what's good, who are you, and there's a certain limit that, there's always an upside down U curve in terms of number of choices and happiness. And usually people can only cope with about 3 or 4 choices before they start to get really unhappy. Like you see people go to buy toothpaste and they just don't know, they can't find normal toothpaste. They're just so you just sort of hope for the best and leap for something. So we really find that paradox of choice is a big thing in OTT, and the more things fragment, the more demand there'll be for curation of and also, I guess, the whole thing for the importance of the brand. So like we were saying, the more you go direct, the more the consumer and the producer are close up together, the more the consumer needs to have the benefit of the brand to understand that this is going to be quality and this is worth paying for. So we're seeing that. And then there's also a maximum limit that people are going to reach in terms of budget, in terms of subscription. So we're actually seeing a lot of AVOD is probably going to be, a big sort of future as opposed to lots and lots of SVOD.
Great.
Can I jump in on that real
Yeah,
quick?
go ahead.
So I think it's interesting from the publisher side. If you look on cable television, people generally consume about 12 to 15 channels max. That's kind of the same on OTT devices. They generally commit to installing 12 to 15 apps. So for us as a publisher, it's really important to get people to install the app. It takes a lot of effort to get that install, but to keep the install. So a lot of marketing and driving that. I think that's one of the biggest challenges on digital right now is there's tons and tons and tons of amazing content, and a lot of it is just never seen.
I'm going to go to Neil on something, and then I want to come back to you on that because you are our only company that is a publishing company that is transitioning much of its business in this transformative environment, and that's hard culturally. I want to explore there in a minute.
Sure.
But Neil, you're doing the same thing at Fandango, meaning that you've been the ticket seller, partnering with exhibitors, partnering with the industry, and now you've bought MGO's assets. You're trying to really compete, against Netflix and grow that business. Can you talk a little bit about that transformational process, and then where are you guys going to be in 2 years? Where do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's a very, very tough market to get into, as you all know. Part of what I can piggyback off of what these guys are saying is that there's a level of curation, there's personalization. It's how do you target and how do you become a trusted brand, right? So people trust Fandango. If we make a recommendation to you, it's going to be a good recommendation. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges is how do we hit the mark there without being off too many times, because then you get the distrust. And I think with the content that we serve, it's fairly easy if you think about all the blockbusters that are out there. That's going to reach a big portion of the market, right? So if we could retarget them or retarget our customers, whether or not they went to the movies, maybe they showed interest in, let's say, Guardians of the Galaxy 2, we know you didn't buy a ticket, so when it comes and it's available at home, that's an easy message, right? So the natural sort of extension, as we like to call the life cycle of the movie, there's plenty of opportunity there. I think the other thing is just ubiquity, getting on every platform that we can, being the default service like MGO was on Roku, and then working with all these other businesses around Samsung, Xbox, potentially onto PlayStation. Those are all ways to kind of penetrate the market in that space.
And you didn't mention great stuff like 200 million apps downloads, and
Correct.
then the 2017 App of the Year.
Yeah, we won a Webby for the 2017 Entertainment App of the Year. So if you haven't used us, go check it out. We also we have a big, massive library of movie clips and licensed clips from our movie clips acquisition, which includes trailers. We have on our YouTube movie clips channel, we're always within the top 10 of views monthly. So that's competing against unboxing, other news channels. And so that's pretty impressive. Just goes to show you the appetite for trailer viewing, bite-sized movie content. And I think that what's exciting about that is there's, once again, speaking to the life cycle, there's definitely the sort of the front end, which is when you get exposed to a movie. For example, it's, The Last Jedi, when that trailer dropped, huge engagement. We know that that's going to be a big movie at the end of the year. How do we keep the audience connected with The Last Jedi as we're able to serve them up tickets, as we're able to serve them up home entertainment?
Yeah, I probe on this transformation. I'm coming to you now, Stephen, but I probe on this transformation because transformation is the hardest part of this business. How do you transform your business without losing what built your business, but go to the market and do what's best for the future of the business? And the example I'll use is my mother was at my house a few weeks ago, and she still thinks Netflix is mails your DVDs out and your Blu-rays out, and in her vision of Netflix is so different than what Netflix has been able to do with a millennial, where they think it's the platform of the future, where I'm just streaming my content. I don't want to own Blu-ray disc. I don't want to own DVD. And so this transformation within the same company is where I'm kind of digging at. And Fandango, you're doing it, and Real Networks, you're doing it, and Stephen, you with EW Scripts, a company that owns TV stations, publishing houses, newspapers, right?
We spun them off, no longer in the newspaper
Okay,
business.
so you got out of the newspaper business, but now you started Newsy to do short form targeting who?
Millennials. I have a question first. So what's
Yeah.
a DVD?
Yes, exactly.
I think Netflix
And
will
there you
still
go.
send you a DVD if you
Will
want
they?
them to.
Yes.
Wow.
And there you go. But go right ahead.
So yeah, Newsy was formed to super serve the millennial news audience. Scripps, a 140-year-old media company, came in and bought Newsy just about 3 years ago now to serve as their national news brand. And Scripps, as a legacy media company, has been on the forefront of the digital side. So for all of our local radio and TV stations have been doing incredibly well on the digital side. And beyond Newsy and our digital portfolio, we have Midroll, which is a leader in podcasting, Cracked, which is a comedy millennial brand. So always looking at how do we build really robust distribution pipes and then potentially bring other content people in the fold to maximize that. And I think the important thing is looking at OTT, looking at what's next and staying true to the legacy business, but kind of, our view at Newsy is serving news enthusiasts wherever they are. So 2 years ago, we took a lot of our video content, which worked as audio content, and launched an audio app. So when people are at the gym and can't consume video, they can listen to Newsy clips. So it's really trying to be strategic and really serving our audience on whatever platform they're on, however they want to consume the content.
That's good. Thank you. This one is a little bit of a right one, but it's coming out of right field or left field, depending. But our business is about innovation, and all of your business is about innovating, right? Even Real Networks, you've been around, but you have to innovate to 4K and others to keep moving forward. Without naming your company, give us a company that you're watching that is the kind of company that's advancing this industry the way that we should all be watching, and this audience in particular should be watching. I'll start with you, Neil, since you've been in it for 2 decades.
Well, yeah, I think
Curveball.
Believe it, yeah, you can't tell from how young I am. I think the obvious answer is Amazon. They're really kind of covering not just the distribution, but also all these innovative technologies. You look at voice and AI with Echo. You're looking at all the ways that they've kind of evolved their business model over the past 2 decades, and it's pretty impressive. So I would say Amazon.
Good. Sandy.
Yeah, I think Facebook. I mean, they're putting a lot of focus around the video and the video distribution. They have the kind of I suppose, the fan base or the audiences, depends what you want to see. So I think their shift into this space is going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah. Speaking of Newsy, I was looking at an article just talking about how many people now are getting their news directly from Facebook.
Yeah.
And really it's disrupting other forms of getting news. People are finding out about what happened in Manchester on Facebook more so than watching CNN. And these shifts are profound, and it's a matter of how do we monetize them. Reza.
Yeah, so you said that transformation was an important part of our company, not only inventing technologies but reinventing itself over and over again. We all love the Tesla brand. Tesla's doing some amazing things, not only in the car space, but in the home and so on. But last night on the space, on the welcome dinner, where space was the topic, space in Hollywood, I was interested in that sort of forward-looking. It made me think about how technology and innovation and transformation should be applied to looking at what the impact is going to be over generations. So so companies that I admire are ones that are making a cultural impact, and not just for now, not just for quarterly numbers in the near term, but over the
Long-term disruptive.
Right. Yeah, long term. Yeah.
Peter, what are you thinking?
I like the company Stan. They're one of our clients in Australia, but they're like the Hulu. They're second to Netflix and as SVOD. I guess the whole thing with innovation, whenever you do focus groups on the future of technology, and there's a real gender thing. A lot of the blokes say, as in the men. So
I was going to define that.
So
yeah.
I always say blokes and chicks. So all the blokes say, oh, it's going to be great. It's going to be like James Bond, and it's going to be cool and all these gadgets. And then all the females say, oh, there's going to be no connection. It's all going to be really cold. People won't be talking to each other. So it's always going to be yin yang. And what I like with Stan is they sort of innovate from a technology point of view, but they put lots of effort into a warm human connection as a brand, and particularly because TV's always been in the affiliative introvert emotional need state, which is security and comfort, inviting a brand into your home and that real sort of relaxation, wind down emotional need state. And so it's really important for technology brands to realise how human and connected you need to be, and they've really done that really well in terms of crafting their personality in a really down-to-earth, warm way alongside a really advanced sort of technology platform. So I like them. Yep.
Spell Stan, is it S-T-A-N?
S-T-A-N, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
Yep,
So
yep.
remember, I said this yesterday, but remember, 3 or 4 years ago, somebody said Snapchat. That made a lot of people a lot of money, so like some of these names could be very interesting for you guys. Stephen, what are you thinking?
I was going to say Amazon, but Neil stole my answer, so I'll have to do another company. This would be a bit of a surprising one. I'm actually going to say Comcast. As we kind of look at sort of linear distribution and the continued viability of cable, I think what Comcast has done with the X1 box, I'm not sure if people have used it, but the sort of integration of Netflix, where sort of many cable companies saw that as direct competition to their livelihood. They've integrated that in a way that you can search for content from a cable channel or Netflix basically at the same level, that you can pull content into the box. So as we think about cable as a path for Newsy and how we exist there, I think they're kind of at the forefront of understanding the threat to their business and being really responsive and giving people a reason to keep hardware in their home.
Very interesting. Thank you.
I would have used Comcast as well, but they're our parent companies.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good couple. That's my bad. So, very good.
So I have some things to say about Facebook as well, but I'm sure I can get to that in another question since someone already brought them up. So instead, I'm actually going to talk about virtual reality. I think I was on this panel maybe a year ago, and someone in the crowd, they were gonna ask, they were like supposed to be asking a question, but really ended up just being a rant on why they didn't think virtual reality was viable, and sort of everyone on the panel agreed. But most recently, I went to sort of this IMAX experience that it was very clear to see how, okay, if I took this IMAX experience and just put it into the goggles, how it would be. And I think virtual reality is actually going to be creating new genres of content. The reason I had been bearish and why a lot of people have is saying like, oh, okay, well, I don't really want, I'd rather just watch the movie on the screen. I don't need to be inside the movie. Or I can just watch the football game. I don't need to have a VR set and I'm sitting in the front row. But this IMAX/VR experience I went to was almost like this dreamscape is the best way I can describe it, where everyone in the crowd was sort of transported through these different worlds, and you really felt like you were flying through these different colorful, it's hard to explain without actually seeing it. If you Google the Antarctica tent from Coachella, you might be able to get a video of it. I think there are videos out there. But basically, I could see in the future it being like, oh, do you want to watch Breaking Bad reruns? Do you want to watch a new episode of Downward Dog? Or, hey, do you want to watch a Dreamscape tonight? And people be like, oh, yeah, let's just go watch that. So I do now think that sort of these new genres of content could at some point, not immediately, but at some point could really transform part of the industry.
I love what you just did, because what you just displayed is that there's riches in the niches, is what we always talk about in strategy. But where I'm going with that is, I remember Lost. Remember the television show Lost? And the last year Lost, they were trying to figure out, I think this was ABC, so I'm selfishly, talking about it because I had good knowledge of it. But they had lost. It was going to be its last season. The Blu-ray disc and DVD and all the physical media was going to be coming out. And so the guys and gals created the Lost University Online. And it was like an extension of that experience. And would not be surprising if TV shows, films, and other key franchises always have an incremental experience that could be in a VR and some other type of experience that is solely for that platform. And so, and by the way, riches in the niches, those are the kinds of ideas that investment bankers pay for. So let me stop here. My blockchain guy's laughing in the back there. We have 12 more minutes of the panel. I saw a couple hands start to go up, which tells me that you guys are bored of the hell of what I'm saying. And but let's finish up with this panel. Like, what questions do you guys have? And let's have some good questions. I saw you in the back, but I don't know if that was.
I recently went to the IMAX VR thing and stuff, and I was very impressed by it. But because, in terms of like from a content perspective, it felt like it was customized towards me. There was a sense of humor in the different experiences I participated in. One I was really horrible at, and they made fun of it. It felt like content I could consume many times, and it'd be different each time. And I thought it was awesome. I really did. I think there's a lot there.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone has to have a VR headset in their home. I think from the IMAX perspective, just, the way you go to an IMAX theater for a laser show or for a movie, or, eventually it's, let's go see a VR thing. And that's the date night, just the same way. And if enough people go, it's as if it's a big blockbuster movie.
Yeah, I mean, the great thing, I'm backing up to the panel to let somebody get ready for the next question, but if you think about the topics that we've covered, you don't have 6 content creators or 6 distributors. You have technology, audience research, Fandango. You have people that are creating content like Newsy and trying to distribute it and syndicate and do partnerships. The reason I say this is you have a very diverse panel across this ecosystem. And that is very unusual for us to get. So what other questions do we have that could be interesting for us?
I have a
Heather.
very strange, thank you, question. I have a 4-year-old son, and you guys are talking about millennials or people who even had experience with cable, but he has no experience with cable. He has my iPad, he can get on it, and I'm like, how did you even do that? He's figured out things because his life is completely absorbed by technology in a way that we don't even understand. I'll be grocery shopping and they're scrolling on my watch, playing with it, as they're sitting. I have a 1-year-old too. So I'll flip it upside down so they can scroll through the pictures. And so as you guys were talking about new ways that media will be developed, and I'm thinking about how like my husband and I will sort of probably gasp at stretch as things change so fast for us. But yet then my 4-year-old, you're talking about millennials, but it feels like you should almost be talking about that toddler set, right? Because they're going to be the ones that are going to have these incredible expectations based on the fact that they can get content whenever they want. They've never had to wait for it, ever. So do you have a response to that? I'm just curious.
I also have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, and my son and my daughter, actually, the 1-year-old, is doing the same thing, which is it's actually frightening to see her on an iPad and being able to move like that. But to address your question, I think there's some clear ways that my son interacts with Alexa. That is like, it's kind of crystallized in my mind. Like that's the user experience that's going to drive that generation. They're going to talk to something. It's not quite there yet, and I think the speaker last night actually made a comment about, you see these robots that you talk to in movies, and then full-on conversations, and we're just at the tip of that right now. And I think it's going to just grow exponentially as the more and more we converse with these products. But he has conversations, and he says, Alexa, what's in a blowfish, and why would it kill me? And it's like, and Alexa will respond. So so as far as content is concerned, I think we need to figure out the way that does hook into the next level of entertainment, right? Whether that's pushing it to your screen, whether that's accessing it in a very specific contextual way. But yeah, I think that's where the trend is going to be headed.
And I think it's also a marketing issue as well. There's a lot of marketing these days that has to really go into awareness and what things are and how to get to them and all that stuff. And yeah, the next generations, they're going to understand that already. So then it's really reaching them with, okay, here is the good content. And it's really finding them where they are. So, Facebook, we were talking about, is, a company that's coming up, and Facebook ads, in my experience, have worked really well. Sometimes you're not 100% sure, where the first click versus the last click, of where you want to count that conversion if you're really trying to, submit it to your boss or something for reporting purposes. But everyone's still on Facebook, and even the younger generation say, oh, I don't like Facebook. They're probably still on there a good amount. Or is it Snapchat, or is it the next one that's coming? And finding them where they are and showing them where the value is, because they won't need to be instructive, like, oh, you have to download this, and then you have to click here, you have to swipe it, they're going to know the how already, so then it's really about selling the what.
It's interesting as a content publisher. That's a challenge. I have a 2-year-old daughter, and not that that's my primary focus group, but she'll be on YouTube, and if the video takes a second to load, like, nope, next video, and it's instant gratification. And a lot of these people will have never subscribed to cable, so you can't have that traditional mindset. And it's being on the platform, and then this is a totally different conversation. You mean this generation? Do you mean previously we had loyalties to certain news networks and like wherever you get the information first in fewest clicks, that's what you consume.
In futurist views of technology and what the impact it would have on society from the previous generation, you recall the Orwellian view of the screen that you look at, but it's also looking at you. We thought that would be, that'd be a terrifying future, and lo and behold, consumers are inviting that experience into their homes willingly for the purpose of utility. And so Alexa won best product at CES. They didn't even show up to Amazon. Wasn't even there, and their product won best.
They had predicted it.
And so you've got a device that listens to every word that you say and decides what's going to go up to the cloud and what's not. And now the newer device has got a camera built into it, and so it's watching you as well. So watch out for that, and your 4-year-old is going to be interacting with the device. It's going to be looking at them. They're going to be talking to it, and that's the future.
No, all I was going to say is absolutely. I have a 6-year-old who, effectively, anytime something buffers, he thinks it's broken. Right? He doesn't get it. Right? He says, and so it's going to be absolutely key. The experience is definitely going to count. And I think it's all going to be voice driven. The navigation of content, which is a big issue right now, people can't search through it, but being able to kind of go through that is going to be the key thing forward.
That's great. Good question, by the way. Go ahead.
So I have a comment. Maybe you guys can help me understand. So I'm listening to this, and when everyone talks about short form content, there's also short form experience and kids that can swipe and do all this. That's wonderful and that's great. That's UI, UX driven. So that's that piece. But I'm a banker, so I want to know that there's revenue and reoccurring revenue. And so when we think about legacy content, House of Mickey, who hasn't made a movie or TV show, and that evergreen component that's absolutely missing and why largely products and projects don't get funded. So the instance of reinstancing of IP is critical, and every format, short form, long form, whatever. But if we go away from the experience that is, and it's intuitive and it's happening, so it's just this piece and that piece and that piece. How do you keep the essence of storytelling? How do you keep that? How do you build that legacy on story so that people like me who look at revenue models and say, okay, well, your risk is pretty high because now when we look at focus groups and everybody else, they're watching content for 15 seconds. We have Snapchat, whatever I'm gonna find. The experience is no longer there, so throw it back. There's a responsibility here to either do great content, premier delivery, so that there's no buffering, something that keeps the content alive, the essence of storytelling, so that the actual art form, and I'm getting so esoterical here, just continues. But I think there's a technological responsibility to deliver that and keep that experience going. I understand. My kids are grown. My grandkids, if they ever start, if Alexa starts telling them a story, I'll probably throw Alexa and then get off the roof. I can't handle that, so I don't want to say anything like that.
Well, it's interesting from the content side. It's actually a really great question, because at Newsy, all of our content's about 90 seconds to 120 seconds. So it's incredibly short form, but our average view time on Roku is 37 minutes. So if we weave and stitch the content in a meaningful way that drives people in, if people want to snack on content and watch a few clips, that's great. But at 37 minutes and we have ad pods, there's an amazing revenue opportunity. So I think for us, we're able to super serve both. If you want to snack on short form, and that's great, but if we're programming in a meaningful way to keep you in, the revenue opportunity is pretty substantial.
That's what we look for.
Diana,
Sure.
the story might not be the story that the program, the content creator creates. The story might be the story of the viewer. And if we step back at it and look at it cynically and say that entertainment is a vehicle to peddle products and brands via commercials or whatever, then the story that some of our analytics and our data departments are trying to uncover is what was the journey that particular viewer took, and how do we track them through that journey. And it might not have been at that one screen. That might have been part of their journey that we got a glimpse of their experience. They might have been in front of a kiosk in a mall, and their journey might have been there, and we follow them along that journey, and at some point we hope that they monetize, and we want to entertain them and engage them across multiple screens and multiple experiences, but it's for the purpose of getting them to convert, and so I think we will see the two stories kind of intertwining, the one that the content creator is trying to program for them, but the analytics experts, the conversation we had before about our data departments trying to construct and forensically put together the story of this consumer. So that's a thought on your question.
We're going to take one last question.
One last thing. I have a 10 and a 12-year-old who started being extremely tech savvy at 2 as well. But it's fascinating to watch these kids grow up. And you talk about monetization. My 10-year-old is obsessed with basketball, right? And so what he watches all the time is YouTube, obviously. But he doesn't mind the advertisement in his content. Like, he will sit and watch the tennis shoe commercials with all of his favorite players over and over and over again. And these kids they're growing up in this fast world where they don't see the commercials, because the commercials are a part of their lives, and the commercials are part of that little clip that they watch. So as long as the clips have the commercials in them, these kids it doesn't even faze them. It's fascinating to watch.
Yeah, I think movie trailers are a great example of that, right? And really what some of the challenges are is how do you get into a native way of serving that, right? And then having it be very much specific to the experience that they're involved in, right? And I think that's what the sweet spot is, and it sounds like your son's he's all for it, right? Yeah, show me more Kobe, show me more LeBron.
My older one could, he can tell you what movie's coming out on what day with what actors and voice actors. I mean, this is their world. They're like, I don't know, the marketing goes directly to them, and it's the content that they want. It's fascinating.
Yeah, just to drift off of some of the short format comments, that's really, hopefully movies will never go away. I mean, that's the form of storytelling that's our bread and butter, right? We want to get you there, but there are ways to engage, and there's extensions of stories in between that point when you get to the final destination. Or we are able to monetize from a ticket sale, and hopefully we can get pieces of incremental monetization on the way there as well, right, through engagement.
I was just going to add to this because, we always look at, from the banker perspective, it's how to scale, how to repeat, how to monetize, how to grow it. But, all of these guys have businesses that are trying to do that in a different area of the business, right? But the ecosystem of companies, we're all doing it. So I'll just use Awesomeness TV as a good example. A company that was started by Brian Robbins. It was started for a particular reason because he's like, I do movies, but I want to do little short form stuff that in YouTube is a real powerful platform. He got seed money from Google. He's one of the funded channels. He scaled that against teenage girls. I was interested in that because we focused at Disney on teenage girls a whole lot. Why do I say that? They quickly grew. They got bought by DreamWorks. Then Time Warner bought half of them, or Warner Brothers bought half of them, one of the companies. Then NBC Universal bought DreamWorks and Awesomeness TV. So what I would just say is what works will get bought, will get scaled, and the key is to create the repeatable, scalable monetization. And I think all these guys are at some level of doing that. And I just want to say thank you for this great panel. You guys have been really good. And thank you for the audience. Thanks.